Definitely. Cheers to this. Here's to a dope recording.
One of many more to come.
This is Do You See Us, a podcast highlighting the authentic voices of creatives. I'm S-Quire Johnson. Welcome to the first episode of Do You See Us? It's finally here. Wait, I'm talking this up as if so much promotion went into this, when in reality, this has to be the most low-key rollout for a project I've ever been a part of. But don't get it twisted. Just because the promo has been super low-key doesn't mean the quality isn't on point. I wanted for this podcast to start off as a well-kept secret, the type that would only be known by those who are in the know, that super exclusive kind of vibe, but not in a VIP at the club type deal. More like the kind of vibe that's shared between the real ones in your circle. Because if we're being real, that's how this podcast came about. The desire to have honest conversations about what matters most to us. Now, a few things to get out of the way before we start. First, yes, there is some nasality in my voice at times, and I'm working on it, but I'm not gonna pass up the opportunity to have a dope conversation because of my nose. Second, the basis of Do You See Us is to highlight the perspectives of creative thinkers from different walks of life. One episode may feature a performing artist, while another may feature someone working in social services. Creative thinking comes in all forms, and that's what makes all of these conversations cool. I've had the privilege to share space, in person and virtually, with some of the brightest minds and biggest hearts you could come across. And they happen to be some of the most talented, innovative people in their respective fields. Come to find out, the beautiful humans you'll meet in this first season were the ones that motivated me to produce this series, off the strength of the talks we have offline. This first episode features a multi-faceted artist, choreographer, dancer, teacher, and filmmaker who, quote, brings her mastery in storytelling to audiences as diverse as her experience. So without further ado, here's the premiere episode of Do You See Us, featuring Esie Mensah. Esie Mensah is here with me right now. I just can't hide my excitement over the fact that we're going to be able to talk about the amazing piece of art that Esie had spearheaded. And that is Tessel. According to the website, it's a national initiative conceptualized by Dora-nominated choreographer and dance maker Esie Mensah, featuring the stories of 14 pioneering Black artists from across Canada, exploring the complexities of diverse movement and voice as a form of resilience. First question that I wanted to ask you, what would you say was your first memory of you falling in love with movement?
And movement and not dance?
Movement first.
Okay.
Then dance.
Okay. I would say I fell in love with movement in 2017. I did yes, and let me explain. So 2017, I had done a theater production called, 1837, The Farmer's Revolt. And it's a Canadian play. Nobody ever does it because it's not the greatest written play, to be honest. It's really weird.
Okay.
But I was working with a mentor and dear friend, Philip Aiken, and he had brought me to work at Shaw with him. And so we were there for a couple months and crafting this show, and I understood what the slow brew of a festival theater, like the Shaw Festival, the Stratfords, do when you have time to work on a project. And this was my first time really, I say, working as a movement director on that piece. And the thing that was really beautiful about that particular show, it was with a small cast of people, intergenerational in terms of age, from 20s and I would say maybe 60s, even 70-year-old people that are still acting. And I was able to appeal to the person that would help build intention and allow the movement that I gave them to feel organic. And that was my space of where I was like, don't feel like I'm trying to give you choreography. Allow this movement to feel like a choice and extension of what you would do with your words, and that the movement is coming out of the same place. And so it was really interesting because then in that time I started seeing the difference between movement and dance. You know, it was like, oh, because, you know, movement, to me, I can pick something up, I can put it down, I can pick up my bag. There's gestural movement that people do every day. But when they see a choreographer in the room, they oftentimes are like, I don't dance. This is the first, on many occasions, I get people that are like, I don't dance.
Okay.
Tell me, or if you need me to do something, give me exactly what I need to do. And then I will put it in my notes. And then I know that when I say this word, I have to do this action and I'm moving here.
Like a paint by numbers type of deal.
Exactly. And I don't work like that. And I disrupt people's process of how they want to approach their work because I'm like, you need to feel it. And the movement, you know, in that particular piece, Philip had the idea of kind of doing like a Hamilton-ish stomp kind of situation, so everybody would be, and it was basically about the revolt of the farmers that were in Canada. This is a Canadian specific play. It's like you hear about William Lyon Mackenzie and different people that helped to shape Canada into what it is today. And so there's a part where William Lyon Mackenzie delivers a speech to these people, and everybody starts to get up, and it's a movement, it's a vibe, and they go into this whole stomp esque stepping kind of thing,
right?
Where and it ends up kind of breathing this song. So now they're rapping this song in between everything else, so they're finding the rhythm. If they saw the end results, so if you fast forwarded these same actors to see what I essentially had choreographed onto their bodies, none of them would have said yes. None of them would have said yes. And what was beautiful was that I led them through the process of understanding what these moves means. And I was like, feel as awkward as you need to, because if the awkwardness is what's natural in your body, I'm not going to try to give you something that's going to go completely counter to that. Let's embrace what your body is, who you are. So I noticed movement, simplifying movement allowed me to kind of get people into their minds and bodies in a different way that I feel really helped champion things forward, so that way as actors they understood that every time they got to that, they were present.
Okay.
Every time they worked through the movement, it felt like it wasn't, oh, I have to take your arm at this count. It wasn't choreographed, it was authentic. And so I think movement for me, I fell in love with it at that time because I realized the possibilities of what movement can do, which to me opens up the world of what dance can look like.
And that's an interesting approach, because I wouldn't, as a layperson to all of this, I honestly did not expect that, even though it actually makes sense as far as that chicken egg type thing about movement coming before dance, but the fact alone that you had really connected to movement so far in, knowing how many other years you've actually been performing in dance and being within the dance world, that is extremely intriguing to see. So let me try to take it back now and ask the question as far as when were your first memories, or what was your first memory of falling in love with dance?
As a child. I don't actually have, I probably have real vague-ish memories, and this is when, you hope that your family could afford a video recorder, because they would have been beer
Do you really
footage.
want that,
I know, I really don't. I think I saw a high school performance, and I was like, what was I on? How did I think I was good? This is rough. But yeah, would spend hours in front of a TV and learn. Because my sisters, you know the family. They would record the mix and an extended mix. They would record different things on Much Music, and so we would have music videos. So I would stop. I would watch the videos. I would stop, rewind, and teach myself the choreography for music videos.
Okay.
So I taught myself. Janet Jackson, like out of the Jacksons, I know people are like Michael as a dancer, Michael, but I don't know what it was, but Janet was the person that I actually gravitated to the most. So it's like When I Think of You, The Pleasure Principle, Escapade, like, and it wasn't, I don't talk about this often. And it's not just the choreography, like I know it's like I don't even know how to describe it as a dancer, but like the in between stuff. So it's the looks to camera, it's the hailing up to a friend in the background, the nuances that sometimes could be choreographed. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. Oftentimes I would say that they are, especially if as a choreographer you're looking at the whole scheme of the picture. You want to find moments where you can groove out with people, that type of thing. And I memorize all of those things. There's only one other friend that I realized, I think we were watching a music video and we both did the same inflection on an off moment at the same time, and I was like, it's my friend Jordan Washington. I was like, you know it too. And he was like, I thought I was the only one. So it's a whole moment. And those are to me are the, it's not just like the main choreography. It's those off moments that help to, add some spice and life into the piece. Yeah. And so if you anything like a lot of early 90s, I would even say late 80s videos, the Bobby Browns, the New Editions, all of that stuff. The girl's walking, I probably know exactly when she's turning in the music.
And I can also imagine that you were very mindful as well during that time as far as when it didn't come off as genuine in those images. Like, where were those I almost want to actually be controversial in that side of things and say, which music video was the one that you just did not feel? Which was like, for me, that was like a whole Save the Last Dance type moment. Like, in terms of, I just could not actually get what message they were trying to put out. Like, okay, I'm going to put that out there. Which music video was the one that you wanted to actually appreciate in terms of their movement messaging, their dance messaging, but it just really didn't hit for you?
Well, okay, I don't know about one from back in the day, but I'll speak of one. Again, this is adding to the controversy. I don't often watch music videos today. Not as much as I'll still go back and watch old school videos just because there's a vibe difference that has gotten lost. Yeah. But there's this particular day I was like, oh, Normani has a new music video out, so let me watch it. I watched it and I was like, oh, this video is amazing. And then, YouTube plays, oh, what's next? And before I could stop it, Tinashe's video came up. I don't remember. I think it's Bouncing. I don't even know. So I watched it and immediately, like, my body just was like, ooh, what's happening? Yeah. What's going on? You're doing the most. And it's her choreographer. And this is where I don't even need to tread lightly, but her choreographer, Paris Goebel, she's the woman that did Sorry, Justin Bieber. She did Fenty shows and everything. So she's huge. She's everywhere. Right. I was like, this, Paris, this was not great. And I hope that you can look at this and be like, this was not great. There's one section of the video I was like, yeah, that can go on. But it was something, to me at least, there was something lacking in the innovation and creativity factor for her, for this artist, for this music video. like they were like dancing, bouncing around on mini trampolines, and I was like, this is not. I know I know like in in the design meetings with the team, with the creative team, when you're like, yeah, let's try to do this and let's try to do that. Somebody along the lines was like, yeah, let's get mini trampolines. We're like, yeah, I choreograph on them, and it's like hype, and then you choreograph on it, but then it's like, no, it didn't work,
right?
So that for me, it's like I go through a bodily response when I don't like something. And so that's that, and it's only because it's recent. But if I had to go back, there definitely is one. I'd have to do some mental digging and probably peruse the internets for a while. So for me, dancing, how a video looks could either make or break the song. Mm-hmm. So if it's a crappy song with a hype music video, it can make those visuals of what's happening can make even the worst of songs great. And there's nothing worse than a great song and a really bad video.
Yeah.
But and how dance artists, creative directors, choreographers help to envision what an artist does and to make it look flawless and essentially unnoticeable. There's a lot of detail work that goes into it, and a lot of that detail work is not getting recognized. Mm-hmm. And the industry, obviously in the States, because Canada doesn't really ever count, the industry in the States the dance artists are starting to push back. But it's also unfortunate because, the people that, to me, were the pioneers are not going to necessarily get recognized for their work. So you're going to get a new kid now that is like, yeah, I may have choreographed a tour for Chris Brown and did a couple music videos. So you might get a Grammy or something, but then it's like the Rich and Tones, I'm sure Hi-Hat has a bunch of them, but like you're not getting recognized for the creative work that you actually did. Like Hi-Hat is the woman. Hi-Hat is the woman that gave us the moves that Kid and Play did in the film. Okay. It's her. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. Everybody knows Kid and Play as the ones that did boom, gun, gun, gun,
the standard, exactly, the trademark move.
The hop, and everything. Mm-hmm. It's her. And that to me is like, so are we just the secret people in the background and the shadows that help to make everything happen and don't ever get recognized? Mm-hmm. Because what she did was iconic, but nobody knows that she was the one until she mentioned it on social media. I would have never have known either.
And the other thing is the amount of interviews that you hear Kid and Play doing, how many times is Hi-Hat's name being brought up? It's interesting because you see that in a lot of different art forms in which the history is being lost. Yeah. It's almost like the Fortnite and Lil Yachty effect is what I usually refer to them. How Lil Yachty came out and was talking about how he doesn't listen to Big and stuff like that, like B.I.G., Tupac, and so on. The amount of appropriation that we see from video games like Fortnite that actually take moves and dances that were actually created within the African Caribbean Black community and were just given a different name in order to monetize them, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just intriguing to see as far as, again, how that continues to be perpetrated within dance. And one thing that I have noticed a lot about the work that you've done over the years is that you have been an advocate for making sure that that foundational history is not only exemplified within your work, but also is honored within your circles as well. Talking again, going right back into Tessel and the individuals that you have seen within different spaces that have pioneered nationally different forms of movement, different forms of dance, for example. I believe there was an individual by the name of Ronald Taylor that you were very adamant that needed to be a part of this particular project. Why was it important to have someone like Ronald Taylor to be highlighted within this project, within Tessel?
Well, Ronald came up at a time where the already small bits of funding that was going to Black companies, creators at that time, I think it was really only two. It was two people, and they would be the ones getting the grant. And it was coming up at a time where there wasn't a diversity of thought. There wasn't a mandate where we need to push and make sure we have more Black, Indigenous, people of color voices in this. He came up at a time where these funding models were still racist, essentially, and worked with a racist model and only supported very few voices. And because of that, Ronald's work wasn't funded the way that it probably should have been. And Ronald is somebody that I have never actually had the pleasure of working with yet. And we've had maybe a handful of conversations. But he is such a pleasant man. And then upon hearing about just the hardships, and it's even a piece, and this was through a mutual friend that just kind of let me in on it. It was a no-brainer to include him as the elder. It's also, for me, it's quite humbling for him to come on board, and Ronald's in his 60s, for him to come on board to support my project. Like, that was also a huge thing because, there were some other elders that I had thought about, bringing in, but it's like, will you be okay if I'm the one that's essentially directing the room in the way that I see fit? How does that work? And, you'll get pushback from some others. And so I had to be quite strategic and specific with who I ask. But Ronald, I feel he needs to be given his flowers. He's been supporting a lot of different companies. He has had his company for 30 years. I am 36 years old. So this man started his company when I was 6. When I was standing in front of my TV learning from music videos. That was when he had started his company. And to me, it was just like, how do we just help you get recognized? It's like, it's very important to give, especially when things are overflowing. It's like giving from an empty cup is never good, but I just was like, it was just really important. It was like in my spirit, it was just really important that Ronald knew how much he was appreciated, even if he necessarily didn't actually experience that throughout the decades of him being around. And so I hope that it opened up doors. I hope that it continues to open up doors. He wrote to me and was like, I really want to repay you. And I said, Ronald, you don't owe me anything. I said, if anything, just open up the door for the next person. I actually don't want anything from you, because it's more, I just want him to be seen. That's really it.
Now, that actually brings up an important point. Fill me in. How long have you been working within the industry professionally?
15 years.
Now, when do you feel you would be comfortable considering yourself an elder within the industry?
Oh, in another 15 years.
Because I'm saying, think about as far as what you've been able to accomplish within that time span.
Yeah.
There's a lot of working professional artists that have not had the opportunity to see a fraction of the success or just the resume, the portfolio that you have. And also giving you your flowers, the amount of doors that you've been able to open within your work as well. And I always found it interesting whenever we got into conversations around eldership and what that ultimately looks like, as far as when do we allow ourselves to be considered elders within that space? When do we allow ourselves to be ready to mentor that quote unquote next generation? Is that something that would be an ageist conversation, or is there, like, what are those actual parameters? It always feels like it's a moving goalpost where that's concerned. But in that space, outside of like that time frame, what would you feel would be from your perspective, those requirements for yourself to embrace that title of elder?
That's a great question. I don't know. I yeah, I still have a hard time acknowledging all that I've done. It's a work in progress for me, and I know that I need to do it often, because then I probably wouldn't be so hard on myself. But it is what it is. But seeing myself as an elder, yeah, yeah, you have me stumped. I don't know, because in my head I'm like, there's so much more that I want to do. There's a lot that I want to achieve. This year specifically has been a year where a lot of people have asked me for mentorship, to do mentorship with people, and it's just like, I don't like doing things half-ass. I realize, I'm realizing for myself, because of a certain project that I'm working on, that I don't like just doing my job, where it's like, and this was something that was said to me on a project in like 2016. I had done a film, and they were trying to troubleshoot things, and I was trying to help, and a friend of mine was just like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm just, I'm trying to, he was like, no, you're here as a dancer. Technically, you're not getting paid to do a choreographer's job, or to do XYZ, or the director's job, and all of that stuff. It's just like, play your role type of thing, which I completely understood. And, definitely in a situation now where I feel like I have to play my role as for this particular project, and I realize that I don't like it. I have an issue with being confined. I have an issue, like, I don't like closed doors. Like, I actually recognize, like, even like psychologically, I'm just like, no, I like to know and feel that I'm open. Because then I feel like my creativity can come. If you put up borders and you're like, you can only do it within this time frame, or you only have this money, I can deal with that. But don't stifle my creativity.
Yeah.
And so I guess, like, the idea of having a lot to give is definitely something that I'm working on figuring out. How do I pour out into people? Part of that is also safeguarding who I have around me, and being really conscious of that, because of where I am now within my career. You attract a different level of people, and some of those people, not everybody has good intentions. Some people just want to step on you and hoping that they can jump, they can level up, the 6 levels. If I have an affiliation with Esie Mensah, then I can jump the 6 levels, because I've made it. It's like, it's interesting, and it's like, even Zara has said this. She's like, people see you as a goalpost. Like, if I work with Esie, then I've hit that level, and now I can start charging more, type of thing. And I'm like, what in the hell? And she was like, well, this is how people think. I was like, why? She's more on the ground than I am. So it's funny when she tells me these things and what people are thinking, and I just laugh. But yeah, so, and I also think it depends on the community. I would say within the Afro community, the more like Afro beats community, I can be seen as an elder for sure. But that would probably be the only community that I would take it in, is that. I don't know about any other. My spirit is an elder. So that would be the thing. But in terms of like dance, yeah, I would say at least a decade, to be honest, or at least another 5 years. You get to the 20 mark. To think that I've been doing this for 20 years feels crazy, but I feel like when I hit the 20 mark, I can pick up that bag there. I don't know about before that.
Even if you don't see yourself as an elder, one thing that I would encourage, or one thing that I would for sure see within yourself at this point, is your innate ability to be a connector when it comes to the work that you do. You have this knack of gravitating some type of, or developing some type of magnetic field in which some of the dopest creatives are able to actually surround you at the right time. And that's ultimately what I saw while watching Tessel. It was something in which, not even though I was familiar with a few of the people that were inside that project, just to be able to see how you were able to allow the creativity that came from a conversation, such an honest and a transparent conversation, which we'll get to in a second, just to see as far as how it was able to germinate into something that was so transformative and so authentic. It is extremely dope to see. Take me back to when the conversation happened, to be able to talk about as far as how that concept came to be in terms of having such an honest conversation within dance and within movement, and who was supposed to be involved, why the conversation needed to take place, and even more so, why at this point did it need to happen?
Well, we all know what 2020 was. And, doing a revolution of love was that first step of like what it means to make space and to make art and to have something that speaks to the people, all of that stuff. But then after that came out, I got the call from Ilter, and he was like, I want to do something to amplify Black voices. And Ilter Ibrahimov is the artistic director of Fall for Dance North, and one of the leading producers for the project. And so he called me before he called anybody else, really. But he sat there and was just like, I want to do something to amplify Black voices. And I think I was jaded, realistically, because it's just like, if we're just going to do something, and I'm highly honest with people, if we're going to do something just to highlight people's bodies, I'm not about that. Like, it has to be more. And if it's going to be more, then, and if we're going to talk about amplifying our voices or amplifying us as Black people, then we need to be in a room. We need to have a conversation. I'm like, that to me is what I needed, and I knew I needed it. And I felt that those people that I was going to bring into this space also needed it too. And so, Harborfront came on board, and things just started to slowly expand. And I said to them very early, and it's interesting to learn the thoughts that I have and how they end up essentially taking shape as the work. But very early I was just like, yep, we're going to have a conversation, and the excerpts of the conversation are going to be the narrative of the piece. It was like, that's how I think.
Yeah.
This is what it is. Not really understanding what that meant and what work would have to go into making that a reality was definitely not on the forefront when I thought of this.
You saw the end goal. Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, it's just right there. What you didn't know is that you have to go through trap doors. There's also quicksand that you have nothing to pull yourself out of.
Don't forget the boulder that's actually barreling behind you.
And you're also walking with like 10,000 bags. You're good though, right? Oh, okay, yeah. Esie, you're fine. You'll figure it out. And that's always like, my ancestors are really funny because they will forever force me to bring out the message that needs to be said and never the message that I would like to say. So, setting up, like creating the roster of artists was a lengthy process. Finally getting things out to the artists, getting confirmation, getting word from them that they're on board, doing the conversation, and also like it's always sounds good in theory, and this is something that I'm recognizing. It sounds good in theory to be like, yes, you want to bring people together and have an honest conversation. What does that actually look like? How do you set things up? So if you want an honest conversation, what are the pre-steps that need to happen in order for people to feel safe enough to share their honesty? Because some of these people don't know me, and some of the people that might know me may not feel safe to have their words in a film because they don't have control. Like, I'm a huge control freak. It's different if I'm in control. If I was giving of myself to somebody else and had to wait for the final product, I don't know how I would feel, you know? But I had to reassure them that, and be quite honest, I have no intention of representing you in a lesser version than who you are. Like, to me, everybody's is on standing on gold stacks. And I have no reason to swap up that gold for copper or for pennies. And essentially, and we also live in an industry that is consistently selling you gold stacks when actually it's just gold plated, and it's actually not even gold plated. It's just silver, fake silver, painted gold. And so being able to set things up. So I now do like forms. I get artists to fill out forms and all of the work that I do, just so that way it's like, are you willing to do the extra work? Are you willing to go the extra mile to answer these questions of like, what are your triggers? Or not necessarily what are your triggers, but what do you do if you get triggered in an artistic space? Like, what can you offer in this process? What can you expect, or what do you expect in this process? Like, just to me, it's just like asking questions, because more than anything, I don't want to hold responsibility if people come into the room with me and something is triggering you, and then you leave and there's no support system and you're trying to figure out what on earth to do for yourself. It's not, to me, it's like, it's never pretty. And I don't like doing that. And so I want to make sure that people feel like there's a foundation, and that they feel the foundation beforehand, during, and after if they need it. So that for me is really important. But yeah, so kind of just shaping things out, really ensuring that groundwork is there, helps me know and navigate how I can talk with the artists. Having Nicole, our sister Nicole Inika Hamilton, having Samson Abonke Abantu Brown. Nicole's also a counselor, as well as a journalist, as well as the woman with the most amazing voice that I've ever heard before in my life. And then Samson, who also has such a grounding voice, is my spiritual advisor. So he's with me on every project that I've done since 2019. He's always there. Because I also know that there is ancestral stuff that has to get cleared, and ancestral messages that have to come through. So I know as he's in the room to support, I also know that he's in the room as a channel. So when messages come through, I may not always like it, but I always have to make space for it. And then it was sifting through the hours-long conversation.
7 hours.
Yeah, 7-hour conversation to find sound bites, which was excruciating.
Yeah. Yes, I completely understand that process.
Yeah.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
But with that being said, how would you describe that experience in the moment as you're hearing all of these honest testimonials coming from those that were a part of it? And how was that experience hearing it back in order to formulate it into one cohesive message within Tessel?
Yeah, when I cried at the end of the second day. We moved, like there was some energy. Day 2 was rough. It's a lot of conversations on grief, and it was a heavier day. So by the time I got to the end of it, I was so emotional, because it felt like, wow, you people really trusted me with your words, and you felt completely okay with leaving of yourself so open. You know, some of those artists were so open with what it is that they've gone through, and to me it was astonishing to receive that type of honesty. So it hit me then, but I experienced it in a different way after. You know, it's like sifting through the audio. I was reading the transcript, so there would be lines or phrases that I was like, yes, this is going to be a statement. We're going to hear this over and over and over and over and over again. Like, it was going to be a thread when I started actually like picking things out from the work. And then I realized really quickly, or my sound designer let me know very quickly about, you know, when you're talking on Zoom and you're talking into a room, into a void, really. You don't say things with conviction. You're saying things with the, maybe you might be agreeing with me, and you hear all of that in their voices because they're looking for some type of either not verbal. Technically everybody is verbal, but we're all muted. But you are hearing some bits of affirmation. So it was rather interesting to see that process happen, and then have her essentially like a magician rebuild the ands and the buts and the words, and where can this feel a little bit more sure, we can add a little bit more surety into these moments, and not just something that felt aloof or unsure, or people that were unsure even though the thought and what they're saying was very sure. So hearing those words, reading the transcript was a process. Hearing the words was a different process. And then it was hearing how I was weaving the script together was also a process. It's funny because two parts of it from an earlier version of the work, of the audio, ended up on my phone, like on random today. So it was like, oh, this is interesting. Oh yeah, all of that was in a section? What the hell? It's like, damn, there's a lot of content in this one section. It was like hearing the things that made it into the final and didn't make it into the final, or moved sections and things like that. Because I was like, I'm just trying to get to a place of understanding, and so I would be sifting through and rearranging, and oh, this sounds good, oh, I don't like it, oh, I don't like how this sounds, and just continuously, you know, shuffling cards to kind of figure out what works, what doesn't. And the version that I had in the piece wasn't actually the version that I was working with when I was starting to do the video editing with my editor. It was a different version. It was a lot simpler, which is really interesting, how much the words really dictate the experience for people, and how different that would have been if I used that other version that I had decided was the final version. I don't know if the work would have been as powerful. And my producer, Wayne, he was like, he was like, what are your reservations of not using this particular version? And he was like, if you think that people don't need to hear this level of truth, then don't worry about people. Like, what are you running from? Is it the people or is it you? And I was like, oh, it's probably me. Because I'm like, this is a lot. This is a lot. It definitely is a lot more digestible when I saw it with movement. And that also was a huge layer of something that I was like, all of a sudden I can really take in these words, because I can see the way that the movement really takes me through the conversation works a lot better. But it is definitely something that I was like, if you just heard the words on its own, it hits hard.
It hits hard. And you're absolutely right. It is a completely different experience, because when I watched it the second time, I intentionally wanted to quite literally hear just the words, because I wanted to get even just a sliver of the idea of what that conversation would have been like without the added excellence that was within the dance and within the movements that were being shown. Just to be able to hear, just like you said, the inflections that people had, whether it was an insecurity, whether it was an anxiety, or whether it was that affirmation that you were talking about, to be able to understand as far as how strongly people felt about the themes of self-reflection, talking about how art is a protection ritual, for instance, being able to understand as far as what that self-care versus sustenance idea looks like. That actually really hit. Being able to introduce those ideas that we don't necessarily take on within our regular lives, much less as a creative. Then now seeing how it translates when you introduce the movement side of it, it is a unique experience. And it's something in which, especially the different styles of movement, the different styles of dance, we're able to actually speak to those. How did you find making those connections and trying to make that order happen? What was that experience like in terms of saying, okay, this particular artist needs to be at the forefront, that needs to be the first, this needs to be at the crescendo before that act 3, for lack of a better term, within that piece? Like, how was that experience for you?
Again, very tedious. I sat with my editor, Sonia, literally, it was like every day for a week. Hours and hours and hours on end editing over Zoom. It was funny because people were like, it wasn't until like she had to drop off the hard drives to me that it was just like, hi, I'm seeing you in person, even though I've actually been seeing you almost every day for like a good couple of months, or like a month and a half or so, off and on. But working with Sonia, I picked almost every single, like, who comes next and how long, all of that was me. You know, it was the minute that Lua singing Mami Wata at the beginning, and this was it's a beautiful thing. It's really it takes a lot of practice to cast out a net into the universe and come back with everything that you need to make a piece. It's extremely humbling because there was something in the way that she sang it that I was like, is this? And then I was like, Lua, can you record it without the drums? Like just you singing it. I just need your voice bare. Because it felt like, yes, is Mami Wata coming through sonically off the top? That was something that was really nudging me. And then Liliona, who lives in Halifax, just decided again to film by the water. Not planned. I didn't give any of these artists. This is what I love when I'm doing projects like this. I love to tell people, you do you. Whatever that looks like to you, I don't care. So film in whatever places and spaces that you feel reflect you, look as beautiful as you need to, wear whatever you want. As long as there's no logos, except for one guy who decided to wear logos. I was like, fat. One Direction, guys.
Just that's it. You had one
simple
job.
Things, man. Simple things. There's a lot of simple things. I was like, maybe it's not that simple. Like, but I was like, you know what? I was you. I've been you. I've been that person that doesn't follow directions and just hands things in. I'm like, I get it. But yeah, it was those two things. Lewis singing Mami Wata and Liliona by the water. I knew that was the opening image. And it was just like building, again, her feeling like she's rising like the sun. So that slow fade in at the top where I'm like, it has to feel like this, like the sun is just just widening your eyes to the daylight that's there and you see her. And then we get introduced to her. And some of the sequences were sequences that Sonia had already built. But Sonia's more of an experimental filmmaker. And she's not narrative-based at all. So it was really interesting to work with her on this because of that. And getting her to understand what it is that what it is that I am attracted to when I'm trying to build the story, because it's like, for me, I go based off how I feel, and it's like timing. So it's like, okay, well, let's go off of this person for a bit, and then let's pull this imagery, and let's pull this person, and because I had to like go through everybody's footage, pick out the moments that I remembered, and so it was like there would be something that of how we finished somebody's section, and then how that would go into, oh, well, yes, we need Yvonne in this moment, or I need Lavana in this moment, or I need Raven in this moment. It was just really quite impulsive. And then there'd be people, I would pick people like, nah, this energy doesn't match. Take that out and then shift it. Oh, this matches. Oh, wow, this really matches. This is really dope. And then it was like, do we layer that person, or do we layer that person with someone else? So it was really interesting. And with the eclecticness of the footage that I got for this piece as well, it was finding really clever ways, which is why Sonia was the greatest person to do this piece, because we were able to see the challenge, meet it, and surpass it. And she did such a phenomenal job at being able to really raise up everything in this work that really made such a big difference. And for me, I'm really grateful for her and what it is that she did to make it possible.
Now, when you got that final product, you went from the concept, you went from the coordination, the direction, you went through the work of the conversations and being able to disseminate that and put all of the other pieces together, the pattern or the tessellation. I hope I'm using it the right way. What was that like when you actually had that quilt in your hands, and what warmth were you hoping for it to present to the audience that you wanted to share within that quilt?
Because we started with audio, went to video, and then Meg, my sound designer, had to go back in and cut things specifically to imagery and stuff like that. But when the composition, sound design, and video, when everything felt like it was almost like 99.9% there were still some tweaks, I cried. I bawled. I remember sitting on my couch watching it and crying. And crying because it felt like therapy. Crying because I felt like I was transported back into that conversation with these artists. Like, I felt like I was back in March in a very open Zoom conversation with people, very candid, and just all of the things sonically and how it leads you forward. This is one of the things that I had said to Megan and her partner AJ that did the sound composition. I remember saying to them, I need the composition to feel like it's the boat, or it's the water underneath the boat that's slowly pulling you forward. It has to feel almost very organic. Doesn't feel forced. It's planned, but it's not. But the sounds and where things come in and how, like, that to me was like so needed. And it was everything. It was everything. I personally will say, Tessel is my greatest piece. I put so much of myself into this work. It taught me a lot. It humbled me deeply. But it confirmed that even where I don't feel qualified, that I will always rise to the occasion. Yeah. Because I wasn't a filmmaker this time last year. And I have 2 films. How?
Now you feel comfortable calling yourself a filmmaker.
Yeah, I
after
guess so.
Tessel.
After Tessel, yes. I'll say that. Not after Revolution of Love. After Tessel, I can be like, okay, this can happen.
And you realize that it was that essence of Tessel that is putting us to where we're at right now. Not just in terms of having this conversation, but pretty much using this as the premiere of Do You See Us? Mm-hmm. And it still to this day trips me the hell out seeing our family's names inside the special thanks for such an important piece. I can't do the thanks justice. I tried in the first time when you actually showed it to us. I want for you to, if it's okay, I want for you to be able to speak on that connection as far as the conversations that within our circle, like what helped in that particular way, like the connections that were actually built within that circle and how those may have influenced as far as what Tessel ultimately became.
It came out of, again, everything that happened last year. You know, we were looking for a space to be able to speak honestly, to feel like I can be myself in the space. I don't have to worry about being judged. I don't have to worry about, just people in the background that are always watching. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. I could exist and feel empowered with existing. And then it was like it started transforming, and then we were just being able to big each other up. But one of the big things that really came out of and really to me sparked why I needed to do this film was because of, Zara asking the question. It's like, so are we going to be angry forever? If people come with the idea of change, are we going to sit in the sidelines and still be crying like well, we are demanding change? Or people are going to be like, well, I'm here and I'm ready to change, and we're like, no, I'm demanding change. It's just like, well, okay, well, if they're here and the people are here and they want to do the work, can we not really start to do this work? And are we as Black folks also hindering ourselves in being able to do this work? To me, this group was asking a lot of really great questions that I, in many ways, it was burning so deep that I was just like, it needs to be a bigger conversation. If we keep repeating these patterns, if the situation is what it is now, and it was what it was when my parents were around, is it still going to be that when my kids come around? And if it is, what didn't I choose to do to help not make that happen? And I think that for me is just something that I hold on to quite dearly. I really feel like we have to do our part to make things better for the next generation. If by the time our kids grow up, if they're my age and they're still seeing Black people getting gunned down like ants, there is something seriously wrong. So it was really like, how do we have this conversation? I know this group is having this conversation, but I know other people are. They may not have space to have this conversation. They may not have the community to have this conversation. But for me personally, without this group of people, I would not have felt empowered in my own voice, challenged in my own voice, to be able to champion this forward 100%, which is why for me, I needed everybody to feel like it wasn't just a win for me, it was the win for the family, because the family helped to make this happen, whether you knew it or not. I'm always listening, and my ears are always perked up. And so I just needed to make sure that, again, people know that they felt appreciated for it, whether they had a complete steering hand in how it got to where it is. As Black folks, we can't forget what we're connected to. You know, we, in so many ways, we have forgotten what a connection to spirit is, and what, and again, it's whatever spirit you believe in, but to know that you're not on this earth alone, and that you have people that walk with you, and that it's really integral for people to be reminded, because many of us have forgotten. And it's forgotten because of survival, it's forgotten because of generational trauma, it's forgotten for a number of reasons, you know. In immigration, of coming here, we do what we need to survive, and for whatever reason, spirituality seems to be something that goes into the back burner. And you know, to remind people about where their own roots are connected to, you know, is a very it is a feeling when people are reminded of, as even on a minute scale, like who they are, you know. It's like, we are not here by mistake. My ancestors are very good at conspiring the right people to be in my life, and also very good at ensuring that there's some people that are not in my life. So it goes both ways, but I very, very much so feel quite fortunate in many different ways to have you know, the wisdom of my ancestors walking with me to feed me through my own spirit, who itself is also very wise. You know, that remembering, the going back into the past and bringing it forward, that process of remembering to me is so necessary, because we have and we hold all the answers. The issue is that when they present themselves, we don't believe it, you know, and that's ego, and it's a lot of stuff. It could be a lot of different things, but, you know, and it's also recognizing what we need to heal. And this is that whole idea of like, how are we leaving the earth for the next generations to come? How are we healing? It's not just like people are so worried about, oh yes, climate change. It is not saying it's not important.
Yeah, it's still real, but,
you know, climate change and environmental, and making sure that you're not throwing out plastic straws, or we're not using plastic straws, like all of that stuff is really important.
Yeah.
But what are you doing to heal your generational trauma?
Mm-hmm.
Because it is extremely hard to see people walking around with baggage, knowing they have the scissors in their hand to cut it, and they won't, for whatever reasons. I've seen it. I've had to pull away from people because of it, because and it's hard, because as something for me, being as going through the spiritual boot camp that I've had to go throughout the last, you know, 10 years, I would say 10 plus, but I'll say actively the last 10 years of my life. Going through that spiritual boot camp prepared me, but I also realized that in preparing me, I want to see that in the people around me. I want you to know that you're strong enough to get through whatever it is that you're getting through, so you can actually achieve the things that are rightfully supposed to be for you. They're chilling there on the shelf, and they're waiting for you. Are we okay to cut off some of these baggages? Are we okay to peel off some layers? Are we okay to rip off some skin, some bandages, in order to actually obtain it, knowing that when we touch it, our skin will grow new. The need for some of those baggages will feel lighter, and we'll be in newer clothes. Like there is a process, and spiritual work is never an easy process. And for Black folks, especially those that whose ancestors have lived through the transatlantic slave trade, or happen to immigrate here, it's like we are holding and walking with baggage, and we don't always know how that baggage affects us or our family or the people around us. But the discomfort of it shows up as patterns in our life. Every time I went for a job, this would happen. Or every time I did this, or, this thing keeps popping up and I can't get, or I keep getting injured, or I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, those are patterns. In a real world sense, you're thinking that, it's just a stream of bad luck. In a spiritual sense, I'm like, no, somebody's trying to communicate with you. When are you going to wake up and listen? So, it's I recognize on some levels my work feels like an awakening, because my ancestors are bringing the conversations that people need to hear and not the ones that they want to hear. The artists in those rooms, hearing Samson talk, speaking to some of them, and they were just like, Esie, you have no idea what you did for me. I don't know if I could ever repay you for what it is that you did. You have no idea what this opened up in me. I didn't think that I needed this as much as I did. Even hearing that for me was like was like the biggest compliments, because then I knew for myself, I'm getting goosebumps, that I changed these people on a visceral level. On a visceral internal level, you feel changed from this, having been a part of this experience. It's all I care about, especially for Black folks. Because to me, if we're going to be going through this, and if we're really going to start demanding change, then we have to really figure out what that honesty is going to look like for us to get there. And not everybody's going to be able to take it. And that, to me, is something that I 1000% know. But then I also am in hopes that, that those steps can be made and that people can start to heal those wounds. Because it's like you heal those wounds, and then all of a sudden doors start to open up you never even thought in a million years would open. You're hitting brick walls, but what you didn't know that was a secret trap door that was opening up to a whole world of possibilities. And I'm also speaking this because this is firsthand has happened in my own life. It's firsthand has happened in my own life by opening up those doors that are trapped behind layers of brick wall. You were there. You saw it. You saw the fruits of what happened recently. It would not have happened if I hadn't went down the road of my own healing, which ended up in turn having a huge effect on the healing of my family and extended family and stuff like that. So, again, not everybody's okay with it. People want to fight you on it. I understand. But to me, your future self needs it. And we also have to believe that we're strong enough to get through it.
That was the last question I was going to ask you. What do you feel that a young Esie from Hamilton would think, seeing this spirit that is here right now?
Two things, and Melly would laugh at this. I talk a lot. That's probably be something that was something that popped in my mind. Oh, she talks so much. Because I was painfully shy. Very few people know this. I was painfully shy, which was really funny because I always danced, and dance was probably the thing that got me in front of people. And I was on student council. Like, I say I'm shy, but like I was still a pretty active and involved person. But I couldn't do public speaking. If there was footage of me speaking at I was like grade 10 I think it was grade 9 or grade 10. I was on the student council. I got asked to read a Bible passage. I also didn't realize at that time that I think I have a mild form of dyslexia that has gone undiagnosed, because I read the paper, but I didn't actually read what was on the paper. The only way that I could read publicly is if I pre-read everything beforehand. Then I can read it and know, my brain would have some type of memory, so it would know not to skip over words. But if you gave me a passage, I would be Aki, professional, facts, active, and then people would be like, what? Like, I actually remember seeing the faces of people in the audience and being like, what did she just say? What Bible verse is this? So it was rather funny. Now I say that. At that time, it was highly embarrassing. But she would be quite shocked that I speak as much as I do, because I don't think I ever thought that I would get over that part of me. But then at the same time, she would say, oh, that's the feeling that I got. Because when I was in, I think it was my last year it was when I was graduating from high school. They had a Black Hamilton thing for youth, and they would giving out scholarships to people, and I got a scholarship. And that's fine. I think it's fine. I was like, my mother might cuss me. She's fine. But as I was in the washroom, I was washing my hands, and I had already been presented with my award, and this lady stood beside me. She was just like, oh, are you Teresa's daughter? I said, yeah. She was like, oh, I met your mom. You're the one that she had her tubes tied and got pregnant. And I'm like, what? Like, that's how I found out. I sit at the table, as my mother never said to any of us. Nobody knew. None of the kids. I'm the last born. Sat at the table, and I was like, Mom, did you have your tubes tied before you got pregnant with me? Who told you? That was my mother's response. Who told you? How did you find out? I guess it's true then. So I was upset, for a bit, but and it wasn't. I think it was like maybe a couple years after that I actually unpacked it, and actually my mom actually told me the full story. But it made sense because I think I had always had this feeling in me, and that woman saying what she did, as probably embarrassed as my mom was, she was supposed to tell me, because what it confirmed in me was, yeah, you're here for a reason, or else you wouldn't have fought so hard to come here, especially through my parents. So that for me was my so there's something different about me. And so if my younger self, we'll say my high school younger self, even before that, I think I always knew. I just knew that I was a really empathetic child. And I was it was really weird. How much I cared about people. And, but if she saw me now, I think it would be like this makes a lot of sense, and who you ended up becoming.
What would you like for people who take in Tessel to take away from that experience?
Two things. I want people to take away an opportunity to empathize with each other better and love each other better. I think that's, it sounds like a really simple thing, but to love somebody is a really hard thing to do. Especially loving people that you don't agree with, and the Black experience is not necessarily one that has it's not a monolith. There's not one singular voice to the diversity of the experiences of who we are. And so, it gives us as Black folks a chance to empathize with each other better, to hear words that may not necessarily be in your wheelhouse, to find opportunity to love people better, hear people better, take responsibility. There's to me, it's like love and empathy is a really great nucleus that can attract a lot of different things that can help make it grow. If people really felt change from the film, which I received a lot of emails from people, I still do, that watched it and feel so moved by it. I'm humbled. I really am.
You can find out more about Esie Mensah at www.asiemensah.com. And you can check out her film Tessel at tessel.film. That's TESSEL.film. Do You See Us has been produced, mixed, and edited by me, S-Quire Johnson. Theme music and original music in this episode provided by Daniel D. Styles Page. Episodes can be found on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/CUsPod and wherever you find your favorite podcasts. For more information on this and other episodes, email us at cuspod@gmail.com and check us out on Instagram at cuspod. This has been an S-Quire Media production.